does the Church of England view its historical role and ongoing influence in Latin America, particularly considering British colonial legacies and missionary activities in the region?
With much more serious and independent economic, financial, and historical research into our archives. And particularly in 21 and 22, that led to a forensic audit of all the money we'd made over the centuries, for instance, from directly and indirectly from transatlantic chattel slavery. Directly was pretty small. Indirectly, in being given money by people who'd made the money out of transatlantic chattel slavery, was very large. First of all, we try and be transparent. Secondly, we are focusing very much more on the involvement on making sure the Anglican Communion is a much more collegial body and not just an English-led last hangover of the imperial era. We've begun in 2023 putting aside progressively £100 million in permanent endowment with an oversight group from the areas affected by slavery to ensure that we're doing it properly and using the money sensibly. We're never ashamed of preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's a good thing. But where we find it's been done abusively and manipulatively, we are very quick to say so now.
In what ways can the Church of England contribute to fostering positive relations and addressing contemporary challenges in Latin America countries, considering the complex intersections of culture, religion, and politics?
We must put effort into the economic development of areas of gross inequality. Latin America has some of the greatest inequalities in the world, but the Christian economic answer is not leveling down but leveling up. So it's the encouragement of schools and of health, but it is also the kind of thing that Pope Benedict wrote in one of his encyclicals, where he talked about the principle of gratuity needing to be built into economics, that you give away surplus, you forego maximum profit to give serious possibilities for the development of stakeholder groups, particularly the poorest. And in terms of the socio-political, so much of it has to be campaigning, speaking against corruption, and particularly around the issues of money laundering, which the great centres for money laundering are in the global north.
In terms of migrations,
yes,
you have been very critical of proposed immigration laws by the British government. What messages do you have for Panama, for example, which is also struggling to deal with the flow of illegal migrants into the country through the Darien Gap?
And that is a huge issue, because the Darien Gap is one of the most precious bits of forest in the world in terms of biodiversity, in terms of forest that has not been ruined over the years. So it is a massive challenge. My criticism of the British government was on a number of technical details about the legislation, but also on some fundamental issues. What we're saying is that the problem of migration is going to get much, much more difficult and challenging over the next 20 years, driven by climate change, which will drive conflict, and both climate change and conflict drive migration. It's far too big a problem. We have got to get past the nationalist solution to the problem to a collaborative global solution. Without that, we will be overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. Secondly, it's generational. It's not going to be fixed fast. And the global nature means that we need to expand the legal structure of how migration is dealt with so that it is approached with a global definition of the refugee that we find in the 1951 Refugee Convention, but which needs to be flexible enough to deal with the modern world.
And with that, I go to my next question, which is your views on same-sex marriage have caused some rifts. And what do you tell to those leaders who oppose your views on this matter?
When it comes to people of various sexuality, they are people. They're not a problem, they're not a challenge, they're not an issue. They are human beings. That's where we start. We must hold on to this view that they are unqualifiedly human beings, exactly like me, exactly, they sin like I do, and they give and they are virtuous like I try to do, and they're human. They have their loves, they have their dislikes, they have their passions. They must be treated with intense dignity, all the more because of the Church's bad history. The second thing is we must listen to their experiences. And that's what I would say to people who disagree with me. I'm not saying you have to change your mind, but please remember to listen, to hear. And that was a decision of the Anglican Communion in 1998 at the Lambeth Conference, that we would not be homophobic and we would listen to the experiences of gay people, TI people. And until we start listening, we have nothing to boast of.
On another topic, which is even sadder, Gaza and Ukraine. You have called for a ceasefire in the conflict of Gaza.
Many times.
Many times. And it's just a polarizing issue. You've also been to Ukraine. And could you tell us your point of view on both of these wars happening as we speak, and a little bit about your experience in Ukraine?
I first went to Ukraine in December 22. And there was, I think, 1 or 2 air raids, no more than that. It was an extraordinary experience. Kyiv, I was in Kyiv, Irpin and Bucha. I listened to the stories, but there was a sense of optimism. We can do this, we can beat them. When I got back in February this year, there were far more air raids. And I went down to Odessa, where there were even more. And it was somber. The casualties are vast. There was a sense of, an unspoken sense of, perhaps we can't do this. Went and visited an army unit well behind the lines, an army unit which was out of the line for the first time in 18 months. Exhausted, traumatized. I saw everyone from the brigade to commander down to private soldiers and spent a lot of time listening. The comment that most struck me was the comment, this is the First World War with drones. Gaza, it is beyond description what is happening with Gaza. What you've got is 2 utterly traumatized populations. When I was there in middle of October last year, 2 weeks after the attacks by Hamas, I sat listening to hostages. I remember the father of one hostage saying, who'd come from Europe. His family had come from Europe, where many of them had been killed in the Holocaust. And he said, I believed this was the one place on earth that we were safe. Got two traumatized populations. They both need security. They both need a state. They both need peace. They both need to know that what happened on the 7th of October can never happen again.